I thought one way for you to talk about the trilogy would be to maybe say a little bit about your thinking of the subtitles: Spring, Hard Times, and Homecoming, and how that informed your thinking about the material that you had and how you wanted to structure it.
因为我们在拍摄的时候，我们并没有考虑，就是说分配这种最后做成什么样的一种结构。那么这个都是在剪辑的时候按照时间来划分的。首先第一部分我们就是2014年到2015年6月份的素材。 然后第二部分是从2015年8月到2016年，那么第三部分主要的是2016年以后的素材，所以先是从时间段上来划分的。
So the concept of trilogy didn't really happen when we were in production, and in terms of the structure, it came during the process of editing. And basically, we structure in such a way for the three parts or the trilogy of the film, with this first one starting chronologically from 2014 to June of 2015. And for Hard Time is from 2015, August, all the way to 2016. And for the Homecoming will be the footage that we captured after year 2016.
然后在剪辑的过程当中呢，我们开始就是比如第一部分先做的是第一部分嘛，然后第一部分做完之后，我们发现这个整个素材这个电影可能就是必须得按照3部分来做。
So, of course, the editing process started with the first installment of the trilogy, which is Spring. And also that was the time that we decided that it takes and requires 3 parts or installments in order for us to really capture the essence of this film.
因为像这种影片的这个起名字什么的都特别的不太好做，因为最初我一直是确定不下来这个影片应该叫什么样的一个名字。 所以当然就是说刚开始我就说那我们说叫，我想就是叫这个青春这个名字，但实际上也是一直很犹豫，包括第一部分春，第二部分苦，第三部分归这种，都是觉得就是很难起这样的一个名字。
So the naming process of not only the entire project, but also the 3 different installments has been a difficult and challenging one. I sort of going back and forth with which names I should use, and even with the title, Youth, and then breaking it down into the Spring, Hard Times, and Homecoming. So it is rather challenging for me to actually finalize these titles.
最后呢，我就还是坚持了，就是用了青春这个名字，因为我觉得青春在于中国的这样的，尤其是近这几十年或者是大概有100年的时间，那因为共产主义在中国改变了中国人的这种对于所有文字的意义理解的意义都在很多方面都改变了。
So I ended up with the title Youth and 青春 in Chinese, and I do think that this particular phrase in the past 100 years, because of the how communism somehow had the impact of how we interpret and also perceive this particular phrase.
那么当过去人们看到所有中国的在这100年来的很多作品当中，不管是文学还等等，当你读到这个青春的时候，它就是代表着一种革命的象征的一种共产主义的一种倾向，就人们对于自己的文字等等，就是说它原始的这种词汇的运用，已经完全带有很强的这种意识形态的这种灌输。
So for the past 100 years, and especially if you look at what happened in the literature, whenever you use this particular phrase, 青春 or youth, it has this connotation about revolutions, and it is very much aligned with the communist ideology of part of the revolution spirit. So I think that's a huge part of the reason why I actually ended up with this particular title.
所以我最后我觉得我还是用这样一个很俗气的，对于中文世界应该是并没有什么新意的这样的一些片名，比如像春啊、像苦、像归等等。但是我觉得它跟整个电影的内容和实际的故事和人物、人的生活这些细节融合在一起，它恢复到一种就是这样的文字的表述，这种词汇的表述和一个人这种生活的自然的状态，我觉得是一致的。它不带有之前的那种意思。
So to create some type of contrast with these sort of ideology-filled phrase such as youth, I decided to choose the naming of the 3 installments with spring, with hard times, with homecoming, and I decided to opt for something that is more down to earth. So these are the terms that somehow reflect the subjects that I captures in their daily lives, and I think that these titles that somehow speaks more truth to the actual workers that I am filming.
I wanted to turn to the idea of homecoming specifically, because actually all 3 parts feature a homecoming. In the first 2 films, the homecoming happens at the end, at the very end after, we spent extended periods of time in the garment factories. But in this film, the homecoming has a different place in the structure. It happens in the middle, and then there's another one at the end. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about just the idea of the return home and how that informed the structure of this installment specifically.
因为是在不同的在一个就是说好几年当中去拍的一个影片，那么从影片的叙述上面，当然就是说也避免不了在前2部有这种回家的这样的一些一些内容同时呢，就是说我觉得因为所有这些工人，他们过去，比如说他们都生活在自己的家乡、自己的那个村庄、那个地方，在那个地方，他们像一个自然的人，他们有一个人的一种很天然的天性，有一种尊严感作为一个个体的话，那么当他们来到一个异乡，来到这些工作的地方，他们就是没日没夜的工作，周边的人其实他们在某种程度上，他就是一个工作的一个工具。你看所有的人在这个场景下，他们其实就是说这种人，他们没有人的那种自然的状态。
So I shot these films for years, and therefore, as a narrative, it's inevitable to actually also capture the moments that they went home and to be with their families, and within the first installment, spring, and the second installment, hard times. But I do think that there's something about the fact that these workers, when they went back home, back to their hometown, you suddenly see they revealed themselves of their true humanities in the hometown environments, that somehow you see they're full of dignity, you see that they're full of character, full of personality, whereas when they go back to the workshops in the factories, and you suddenly see them somehow being rendered or reduced to almost like machine or a tool to make a living, to survive. So I think that is the contrast that I'm trying to capture with the scenes of them traversing between the hometowns and also the workshops.
I wanted to ask about the ending. I mean, endings are always important in films, but maybe they're especially important when you've made a 10-hour film. And I'm just curious about the final shot, but this is the final sequence actually, to see another homecoming and then a return to the factory.
我用的结尾实际上就是我们最后一天拍的素材，其实就是最后，当然我们也没有拍更多的，实际上是我们在最后，也就是我们所有素材的最后的一天的两个镜头。对我来说，有叙事的问题，还有一种纪念，就是我们自己的工作的一个结束。比如说我们在拍片，我们拍到最后一天，其实我们电影的这个结束的最后一天，就是我们素材的最后一个镜头。
So in terms of how the last scenes of the film, after 10 hours of footage being added in, is sort of coincides with the last production day for our filming within the time period from 2014 all the way to 2019. In fact, the last day of our production, there were 2 takes. So this is one of the 2 takes that we captured. So I do think that as a narrative, there's something about what's being captured on film somehow coincide with our work as a filmmakers, and that's the last day of and the last 2 takes of our film somehow sort of work very well as a way to close the film.
有时候在做电影，在每一个电影当中，可能就是有时候，比如说我有的地方我会非常理性的指导我怎么去构建这个故事，有的时候是完全出于其他的理由，可能完全是一种私人的理由去用一两个镜头，比如在体育区里边，我在第一部分的中间的部分，就用了一点点倒叙的，就是说影像。就是完全本来它是一个一直往前进的一个叙事，但突然插入了一种倒叙的方式。实际上对我来说，我就觉得我想保留这两个镜头。那么在这边呢，我就是觉得这是我们拍了很长的时间，我觉得我们应该把最后拍到的影像放到这个电影的结束。所以有时候是完全是一个自己私人的一种心理。
So sometimes that when you structure a film and you want to create a narrative, then you can be very rational about the decision-making process, thinking that this makes sense to do it here. But I think that there are also instances as documentary filmmakers that there are certain takes or there's certain scenes that you, for your personal emotional connection with that particular scene, you just think that this is a perfect place for it. For example, for my film West of the Tracks, in the first installment, in the middle of the first installment, there's this flashback scenes. And it's very different from the rest of the film, but I just think that those are the 2 takes in flashback is something that I had personal connection and personal, emotional sort of feeling compelled to actually include that at that moment in the middle of the first installment of West of the Tracks. So similarly for this particular film, the fact that this is our last day of production and then that's how we end the film somehow seemed fitting to me.
All right, I think we're going to open it up to have some audience questions. Yeah, in the back. There's a microphone coming to you.
Oh, I can yell.
No,
I'd just like to compliment you on how you immersed yourself so beautifully with all these families and all these people. Have you had a chance, or will you get a chance to screen this for some of the people?
就是被拍的人。这个比较困难，因为就是我的电影大部分情况下，比如说过去最早的时候是靠盗版 DVD， 然后最后就靠网络，然后还有一些就是私人的一些私下的买卖的一种通道，然后别人看的我的电影。
So it's quite difficult. It has been the case that in order for people to watch my film in China, they have to go through either piloted DVD, bootleg DVD, or could be a link of the film that's been piloted, or this could be some kind of bartered private trades of films that they somehow get access to.
所以没有一个正常的一个电影的通道，所以有的时候，比如说第一部分出来的时候，网上有那个连接，然后我就发给一些就是拍过的，比如在这电影里，在整个这3部分里边，有时候出现的一些工人，他们愿意看，他们就会通过手机去这个通过这个连接看一些这些短的视频，就是一些这个影片，然后还有一些就是说他们会把这个电影拿过去之后，他们会给你截成片段式的，然后改变你影片里边的叙述的内容，然后他会加很多的解说，然后用你把这个片变成几分钟、十几分钟这样的去在网上播放。就是当然很多人看到这样的，他们也很生气，说你怎么会把我们拍成这样。
So, as I mentioned, that it is very difficult for people to watch my film through the normal release channels in order for them to do so. So for the first installment of Spring, right after it was screened in festivals and also in theaters elsewhere, there have been a piloted version of it online that's available in China. So I actually don't quite mind the fact that it's been piloted. I somehow forward that to the workers so that they can have the opportunity to watch the film on their cell phone. And so that will be the entire film that they will watch, or they also access to, they have been piloted films being cut down into different sections, and then also not only with the brief episodes that they showed, they also included the commentaries along with those episodes. So I think that some of the workers that, not the ones that watch it in its entirety, but watch the ones that somehow being cut down into different pieces and then have commentary on them. Somehow
Sorry,
they got
commentary of the workers who are in the scenes?
no commentary of the scenes that are being portrayed.
But whose commentary? Just
就是你不知道是谁做的。
You have no idea who is speaking.
所以网上到处都是。
And somehow some of the workers watched them and then got upset because that they think that how could you film us in such a way because of the commentaries being somehow factored into their viewing experience.
因为在中国，我的所有电影没有一个正常的通道。没有一个正常的通道，去大家去正常的看待这些影片。那么像最早的时候，比如说我的第一部片子铁西区，那么因为大量的盗版的 DVD， 那个时候就是真是。上百万套，真的是大量的在中国的那种，而且在很短的时间里边，大家在看。结果呢，可笑的是，出了一个文件，说是出这个文件禁止这个盗版 DVD 发行，就是禁止这个盗版 DVD 卖的这个地方是什么地方出的文件呢？说是。就是一个政府的扫黄打非办公室出的，说这是一个淫秽作品。
So since there's no channels for me to get to show my films or for people to watch my films, there have been very interesting phenomena developed as a result of this. For example, for my first film, West of the Tracks, right after it was released, and there were thousands of different type of versions of piloted DVD being released and being sold and being somehow traded in the market. And then it's so popular to a point that the governmental agency somehow issues a directive to ban such a trade. And for whatever reasons, it's actually coming out of those agencies that control obscene or pornography, obscene materials in the market, and somehow my film has been labeled as such.
所以当然我个人从来不去也不在意这些事情。我们做很多电影是按照正常的、很认真的去做这些影片，所以也就不就是我个人其实也不在意这些事情。
So I don't really mind that phenomenon I just mentioned. I do think that what I can do is, as a filmmaker, is to do my job in such a way that I take everything I do in terms of my films very, very seriously. And that's what I have control of. And the rest that's outside of my control, I will not pay too much attention to them.
All right. Yeah, we'll go to you. Yeah. So microphone behind you.
王明导演您好，非常感谢你的电影。然后我有2个问题，一个是在2018年，我注意到他们那个工人的宿舍，他们的楼道好像被清理得比较干净，然后楼下也不再有那些大棚遮着的车，请问是有什么特殊的事情发生吗？然后第2个，我想请问一下，就是请问您还有跟这些工人有联系吗？尤其是在2019年的疫情之后，然后还有过去一段时间的经济可能有些低迷的状态下，请问他们的生活有任何变化吗？或者是之类的？谢谢。
So it's a two-part questions. The first one is that I noticed in the film that, especially during the parts shot in 2018, somehow the dormitory seems cleaner, less cluttered. And also the streets underneath the dormitory building seems to be a little more orderly. That not that many trucks somehow being allowed in those areas. Is there something happen, or did something happen during that time in order to have this type of changes of the locations and also the space? And the second question is that. I wonder whether or not you're still in touch with the subjects that you capture in this film, especially after 2019 with the COVID and its impact on the local economy. What kind of impact does it have on those workers who have been working there for years?
你说的这种街道干净等等的，这个我自己没有注意，但我所以我没办法回答你。
So why suddenly it got less clutters and somehow cleaner? I didn't notice, so I really cannot really tell you what happened.
另外像这个就比如我们拍摄的人，那么当然一直到我们我做的这个第3部分结束的时候，比如像这些字幕呀等等，有时候比如说我听不懂他们的有的话实在听不懂，就会去找他们说，打电话问你能不能跟我讲这个话是什么意思呢？然后就也会主要在对这些字幕。那么同时呢，我们也当然是不是所有的人，是有一些，比如像有几个人，我都是一直都有来往的。那么经过这么多年之后，我们在电影当中看到的这些最初从第1部出来，他们都是些孩子或者非常的年轻。那么今天呢，其实他们已经是完全进入到一个成人世界，而且他们大部分人，我觉得这里边就是离婚率极高。就是几乎你看到里面在谈恋爱的，最后都离婚了，而且很多人都是自己单独带着孩子生活。
So after I finished the shooting and the production for the 3rd installment, I did keep in contact with some of the subjects. The reason for it is because during the process of trying to finalize the subtitles, there were certain dialects that are being spoken in the film that I wasn't quite sure what they meant, and so I have to reach out to them to verify what they were saying at the time, and therefore we can have the correct subtitles for the film. And I did, and still do, keep in contact with a few of the subjects that I captured in this film, and not all of them, just some of them. And I did notice and do notice that very interestingly, the subjects that I captured in my first installment, Spring, at the time they were in their teenage years, during the adolescent phase of their development. And a lot of them, of course, now they are adults now, into their adulthood, they are adulting in such a way that I also find interesting that a lot of them that they go through the process of divorce, especially for almost all of the romantic relationship or marriage that you saw in the film ended up with divorce. And also a lot of subjects now, they are single parents with their children.
Okay, we have time for one final question. Yes, let's go to you. Yeah. Oh. Sorry.
王斌导演你好，想问一个问题，就是你是怎么看待你的拍摄和你的被拍摄者之间的关系呢？就是我比较好奇，就是当他们知道自己在被拍摄的时候，他们是会有更多的倾诉欲，还是说，在这样的日常生活中，他们其实已经把自己被拍摄这种状态当成了非常自然的一部分？
So the question is about the dynamic between the filmmakers, or in this case, the cinematographer and the subjects that being filmed during the production. Do you find that as a filmmaker that because of the presence of the camera, somehow these subjects tend to express themselves in such a way that want to really speak to the camera, so that they will find some kind of dialogue with the camera because of the presence of the camera, or that these subjects somehow they're so desensitized by the presence of the camera that they didn't even notice that it's there filming them.
对于纪录片来说呢，我觉得有好多种拍摄电影的方法同时呢，就是说比如构造一个影片，你为了如果你要是非常快速的想构造一个故事，在电影里边完成这样的一个故事的话，我觉得那种问题就会更严重，因为你的所有的拍摄都是为着你的这个事先设计的这个结构来服务，这样的时候这种就是说你和这个被拍摄人之间的关系就会变得比较的复杂。
So there are many ways and different type of approaches and methods to make documentary films. I think the issues of somehow the subjects will notice the presence of the camera and somehow trying to speak to or express himself or herself differently in front of camera will become even more serious if you are trying to do your documentary. It's such a fast-paced, very in such a way that you want your subject to serve your purpose that you already designed in such a way to create certain narrative in mind. So I do think that if that is the kind of documentary you want to make, you are running the risk of this type of dynamic happening in your film because of the short period of time with your subject.
但是在我的这个拍摄里边，我觉得没有这样的问题。原因是什么呢？比如说我们每天都在这边拍，每天拍很多的素材，每个摄影机每天都是3、4个小时的素材，4、5个小时。那么所以跟所拍摄的对象所形成的真正这种所在共同 存在的这个时间远远超出，就是说你的好奇，比如说你拍摄的人物对摄影机的好奇，以及他的个人在某一个时间段里边，就是有一种就是说被摄影机所干扰的一种反应。等等，这种反应都是在很短时间的这种拍摄当中会显得非常的突出，但是在一个非常长的时间里边，这样工作里面没有这种事情。
So my way of making documentary films is not the ones that I just mentioned before. Instead, I chose to take on the approach of I want to immerse myself with the subject with long durations in such a way that day in and day out that I will be with them and will be filming them. And I do think that the aspect of what's been talked about before, a short and fast-paced, get the footage you need to serve your narrative purpose, is more likely for you to have the subject out of curiosity because the presence of the camera that will act differently, or that they will react to the interference of the camera in front of them. So I do think that those are the issues that will be encountered by the first way of doing film, but not the way I'm making documentaries. I coexist with them with such a long period of time, and I can minimize that kind of dynamic happening in my film.
另外就是说我所有的拍摄，其实就是说我不愿意刺激我拍摄的人物，我不希望就是说我用某种方式，然后去或者说别人说就是说我觉得我没有我很少跟拍摄的人有什么样的互动，因为我对这种互动不信任，因为我觉得没有必要这种互动。所以我觉得呢，那我觉得更安静的，更一种就是更安静的，你去自然的去记录。我喜欢这种很单纯的记录。
And another thing that I don't do as a documentary filmmaker is to either provoke or agitate my subjects to serve my purpose. And I just don't really trust that kind of interactions, and I don't see the need for my kind of documentary. So I would just quietly, calmly, long duration, as an observer, just trying to document, chronicle, and record what their daily lives are.
I'm afraid we are out of time, but I want to thank Vincent for your work and Wang Bing for being a regular guest here. I hope you'll come back soon. It really is always a pleasure and honor to have you here.
谢谢。